Rick is a doctor of optometry. He understands the technical functions of a camera. He said in optometry college, the optics courses he took helped him understand the technical functions of a camera. After 40 years in optometry, he retired in late 2019. Since then, he's been processing previous travel photographs. He joined Westbridge in 2014. He was looking for a large group of photographers with a diversity of talents, quote, so I could continue to learn and advance my skills. Westbridge is truly a great club. So Rick's going to talk about the camera and the eye. So take it away, Rick.
Fine. To give a presentation, it probably behooves you to know more than the audience on things. And I thought about it over the years. There's so many good photographers in the group, and some are professionals, semi-pros. So you've got people that really have quite a bit of knowledge. So what am I going to tell you that you don't already have a feel for, or that you already know? And the other thing I know is the eye. So the two work together in some fantastic ways, and that's why I thought, well, let's put a comparison together, and then we'll also see the contrasts. And I think that's probably even more important. If you understand how you see versus how the camera sees, it's simply going to make you at least a better understanding photographer. I can't guarantee it will make you better, but it certainly is going to make you understand why the picture you took isn't really what you saw then too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to have a short video. It's less than 5 minutes. And it's kind of a good summary then too. It's one of the TED Talks that you probably have all heard of. And this will kind of go through just about everything I'm going to talk about. It was done quite well. That's also pretty meaty, pretty heavy as far as a lot of information, which you don't need to obviously take a test on the end then too, but it will help you as far as remembering these things.
Watch the center of this disc. You are getting sleepy. No, just kidding. I'm not going to hypnotize you. But are you starting to see colors in the rings? If so, your eyes are playing tricks on you. The disc was only ever black and white. You see, your eyes don't always capture the world as a video camera would. In fact, there are quite a few differences, owing to the anatomy of your eye and the processing that takes place in your brain and its outgrowth, the retina. Let's start with some similarities. Both have lenses to focus light and sensors to capture it, but even those things behave differently. The lens in a camera moves to stay focused on an object hurtling towards it, while the one in your eye responds by changing shape. Most camera lenses are also achromatic, meaning they focus both red and blue light to the same point. Your eye is different. When red light from an object is in focus, the blue light is out of focus. So why don't things look partially out of focus all the time? To answer that question, we first need to look at how your eye and the camera capture light. Photoreceptors. The light-sensitive surface in a camera only has one kind of photoreceptor that is evenly distributed throughout the focusing surface. An array of red, green, and blue filters on top of these photoreceptors causes them to respond selectively to long, medium, and short wavelength light. Your eye's retinas, on the other hand, have several types of photoreceptors, usually 3 for normal light conditions, and only 1 type for low light, which is why we're colorblind in the dark. In normal light, unlike the camera, we have no need for a color filter because our photoreceptors already respond selectively to different wavelengths of light. Also, in contrast to a camera, your photoreceptors are unevenly distributed, with no receptors for dim light in the very center. This is why faint stars seem to disappear when you look directly at them. The center also has very few receptors that can detect blue light, which is why you don't notice the blurred blue image from earlier. However, you still perceive blue there because your brain fills it in from context. Also, the edges of our retinas have relatively few receptors for any wavelength light, so our visual acuity and ability to see color falls off rapidly from the center of our vision. There is also an area in our eyes called the blind spot, where there are no photoreceptors of any kind. We don't notice a lack of vision there because, once again, our brain fills in the gaps. In a very real sense, we see with our brains, not our eyes. And because our brains, including the retinas, are so involved in the process, we are susceptible to visual illusions. Here's another illusion caused by the eye itself. Does the center of this image look like it's jittering around? That's because your eye angles most of the time. If it didn't, your vision would eventually shut down because the nerves on the retina stop responding to a stationary image of constant intensity. And unlike a camera, you briefly stop seeing whenever you make a larger movement with your eyes. That's why you can't see your own eyes shift as you look from one to the other in a mirror. Video cameras can capture details our eyes miss, magnify distant objects, and accurately record what they see. But our eyes are remarkably efficient adaptations, the result of hundreds of millions of years of co-evolution with our brains. And so what if we don't always see the world exactly as it is? There's a certain joy to be found watching stationary leaves waving on an elusive breeze, and maybe even an evolutionary advantage. But that's a lesson for another day.
All right. Well, I'll give you a good background in a rather brief summary. I know there's a lot of information there. So you're blending technologies together all the time. This fella, sort of the bionic eye idea, he's never without a camera. He, as a kid, had a shotgun accident, which I guess he's lucky he's alive, and he lost an eye. He's a filmmaker, and he decided the good idea was to put basically a video system that can be transmitted out, good for about a half hour. And how good the video is, I don't know. I think it's a good way to grandstand and get some attention though too. So, but again, blending of ideas and technologies and biology, it's all there in one form or another. How does light behave? There you go. You saw the electromagnetic spectrum in school. And again, don't worry about everything that's written up here. You don't need to learn this. It really just comes down to this is all light, starting with the cosmic rays, going all the way down to broadcast band. If you could see the whole band, you would see microwaves and you'd see X-rays and the whole bit. This is what we see though. We got a narrow band of color here that we can see, the visible light. Running from about 400 nanometers up to about 700. And those are all wavelengths. So certain wavelengths you see, certain ones you don't. The vast majority of them we do not see. So ultraviolet will give you the sunburn and different types of UV, and the infrared is sometimes used in the cameras. You take out a filter, a blocking filter, and those sensors are sometimes good for infrared too. So that's one that's close to the visible wavelength. So that sometimes gets used. Here's what light does. It can get transmitted, it can get reflected. We all run into the reflections. I mean, sometimes reflections are great. They're off a body of water, they're off a window, which can be absolutely horrible if you're trying to photograph something inside. So, but reflections are something we deal with all the time. Refraction basically is a bending of light or controlled bending of light. That's part of what I did for 40 years as far as profession goes, because it's a matter of bending light so that it goes into focus in the eye. Diffraction, you've heard that talked about. It's basically the small hole here ends up creating issues with the light as it goes through. And I got another frame on that I'll show you. Absorption, just what it says. Scatter, there's a lot more light scatter out there that we think about. And that's why if you're going to carry one filter with you, you're probably going to carry a polarizer. because it depending on the lighting circumstances, you get an awful lot of white light. It's just a scatter. And if you can polarize it down to just one level or another, you're going to get a better picture then too. You're not going to get all the scatter light, and you're going to intensify the colors. Wave diffraction, again, I'm not going to go into this in tremendous details, but this is considered the wide aperture. This would be the diaphragm. The aperture and the pupil, they're holes, and I'll say that a number of times. The fancy name for saying a hole, it lets light through. So this is considered a large aperture here. It affects light a little bit as it goes through, but not really. It doesn't really affect its wave composition. The smaller you make that aperture, the more, and it's like I said, it's really more the start bending the light. They'll hold it back, they'll slow it down in some areas, and the closer you get to the wavelength of the light, the more you'll screw things up. So that's why, you know, f/22, at least for most situations, is probably not the ideal. Your best optics on most lenses, f/8, f/11, where you're sort of in between. You have a good size aperture, but not too large an aperture. So, but you get down like this, and you're going to get some interference then, however bad or not, depending on the picture. And this is refraction. We've all run into that. You look into the water, and it would appear the object, fish, whatever, is closer, and it looks magnified. It's bigger than it really is. But that's because the light, as it goes in, well, it's actually just reflected up, but it's being bent. So the refractive index of air is 1. You got 1.33 for the water. And what that does is that creates a refraction, but it throws off position of things. You have a hard time judging the position of something that's in a different refractive index. So the eye and the camera system. I will show you this more than once. It's not a perfect picture. Most of what I could pick up had about 80 or 90% accurate. From there on, you wonder who made the stuff. But at any rate, film in the cameras we used to use, or the back sensor. The retina, actually the retina curls all the way around. It's all the way around here, and that's why you can see so far out to the side. Diaphragm in the camera is the same as the iris, the colored part of the eye. Aperture, pupil, they're holes. They let the light in. Small apertures let a little bit of light in. Big apertures let a lot of light in. So it depends, obviously, on the situation you're in, what you need. They both have lenses, much more sophisticated lens systems in a camera than in the human eye. The human eye is always getting its image cleaned up by the brain, whereas the lens system, you try to get as good a picture as possible then too. So then the rest of that's not important. The outer surface of the eye is really your tear layer. You've got 3 layers. You've got what they call a lipid layer, and you've got an aqueous layer, the wet stuff you think of as tears, and a mucin layer. Mucin's mucus all the way through the body then too, but your tears cling to the front surface of the eye, so you need something that will actually cling to the eye so that everything else will stay in position then. If you don't have good tears, you will not have good vision. And I can't tell you how many times I'd tell patients that. They'd come in, they'd feel like, oh, I need glasses change and this type of thing. And I would check their tears, and their tears would be horrible. They blink, and 2 seconds later, their tears just fall apart. Well, that's an optical portion of the eye. If you don't have good tears, I guarantee you will not have good vision then. So good tears, good vision, bad tears, bad vision. And all that type of thing that you would have for the eye, that tear film is the front surface of the eye rather than actually being the cornea. So tears are important. And oils are great for tears. Oils aren't too great on your lenses, though. They're going to create a smudge, and we've all cleaned off fingerprints or whatever then too from the surface, trying to keep them clean. So, oils on your camera lens is not a good idea. So, clear front portion of the eye, the cornea, and I'm just sort of working my way back here. Yeah, who needs a protective UV filter? This guy did for sure. So And we'll try not to get into abrasions of the surface of the eye like this then too. So, but that front surface needs protection. This is pretty straightforward. It's got the bigger openings, as we talked about before. It's going to let more light in, pretty obvious. Smaller openings will let less light in. And your diaphragm, your apertures, extremely important in photography. You get very quick reactions. That's the fastest reaction you're going to get, changing from one light level to the other of the pupil, which is going to do the same thing, all dependent on light then too. So obviously the aperture in a camera is a direct copy of the iris. And again, same type of idea here. Pupil, color part of the eye is the iris, and you got the aperture and the diaphragm. And again, who knows how much we will blend technologies as time goes along. Colored part of the eye, the iris. And it comes in all sorts of shades, as we know, from very, very deep, dark brown, almost like a chocolate brown. And then you can see as you go along into ambers, greens, hazels, begin to get into the blues. And some are extremely blue. This one down here was an interesting one that they put in. That is an albino. An albino has no pigmentation. You can see how the eyelashes are white. Well, albinos have all sorts of physical problems, but they don't see very well. Even in normal light, even in low light, you're going to have some issues then with the albino not being able to see real well. Excuse me. He's making noise, so I'm going to go ahead and put him away then too. Cleaning the carpet is very nice, but not during this. Sorry, it'll probably be the cat next. So, at any rate, you have all these different colors of the eye, and there are reasons for that then too. The albino, like I say, does not see well. Matter of fact, these little reddish areas, those are holes. Those are micro perforations in the iris. So they see about the same way you and I would if we had a spotlight turned in our face. They simply do not block the light. Even the white of the eye transmits light. So, they have a lot of physical problems, and that's certainly some of them. All right, how many iris colors are there? I showed you a bunch. Anybody got a guess on that? Anybody want to give me a guess? And if you get it right, I'm going to have you tell me why. Oh, no guesses? All right. You got one eye color only, and it is the eye pigment. It's brown. Iris color is determined by the melanin pigmentation that you have in your skin. Melanin is the same thing that gives you skin color, whether it be real light color, darker, black, what have you. That's all melanin. It's throughout the whole body then too. So the more pigmentation you have, the darker your iris will be. So you get into blues, grays, greens, they're all the same thing. It's just a lighter amount of the melanin. For most people in the world, their eyes are brown. It goes along with their skin pigmentation. Certainly if you live in the equator or within 20 degrees or so of it, you're going to have dark skin, because that's the only way you're going to survive without having sunburn all the time. The melanin absorbs the radiation, and along with this, you're going to most likely, I mean, there are exceptions, but most likely you're going to have very brown eyes. People that live in the far north, different situation. They never see the sun. They hardly ever see the sun except at an angle. And they have much less melanin. They're much more fair complected, light colored. They don't do well in heavy sunlight, though. They're much more likely to get sunburn. So the melanin, the same thing, gives you pigmentation, also colors the eye. But that's all it is. You got it or you don't. All right, experienced photographers know how to see as the camera sees, so you can blend technology here. Blinking re-wets the eye. We talked about that before. It's not really a shutter click. The eye doesn't have a shutter. It's just kind of like the video camera. It's on all the time. And again, back to the diagram, just so we remember then too, the retina, the back surface of the eye, like the film of the camera, diaphragm, iris color, the hole in the middle then too, and the lens. This gives you an idea of how the lens focuses. The front surface of the eye, the cornea focuses, that's got power, and so does the lens. 2/3 of the power comes from the front surface of the eye. It's got air has that refractive index of 1, your cornea about 1.33. So it's going to bend the light basically. And the eye's only an inch long, so you have to have a fair amount of power. You get into your camera lenses, much more sophisticated. They have a lot of times they have different refractive indexes, the low dispersion glass that you hear about. What else do they call them then too? Achromatic doublets. That's all very high scientific talk for what it does, but if you don't have that, you don't get a good picture is what it comes down to. You want good optics, you want something that's lightweight. They do a pretty marvelous job. Sensor in the back of the camera, a more sophisticated lens system that isn't a zoom, and they do color the lens areas differently just so you can kind of be more distinct on them. But I know they all look weird in shape and this type of thing, but that's all designed and redesigned by computer just to see what you can do with a beam of light to not scatter it too much and yet still get good optics throughout a large focal range. This is a cutaway of a prime, and we always hear about prime lens being at least a moderately superior optical system. They are probably just because they're a much simpler system. You can see there's less lenses here. You've got less what they call lens to air interfaces. And because of that, you have a much simpler system that is simply focused for one distance. So by their very nature, by being simpler, they're going to give you a better optical system then too. So, and that's why some people just, they just love their primes. I've got a couple that I use, I like them, but I'm a zoom kind of guy then too. So most of the time I'll carry zooms. All right, we have a free sensor cleaner with every new Canon purchase then. So you guys make sure when you go out to buy a Canon camera that you get this little guy with it. And let's see, he's using Swifters, so you need to buy a tiny package of Swifters then too. So he'll keep that sensor in good shape though. Going back to the accommodation of the lenses, again, getting inside the eye, how does the eye focus? Because it doesn't change this lens back and forth. That lens is in basically a fixed position. It gets thicker. You want to focus close up, it changes its shapes. You get a contraction of these muscles that loosens the zonules and the eye changes shape. So it goes from, I got it lined up here properly, like this to like this. And that allows the eye to focus at a lot of different distances very quickly, very fast. Works for about the first 40 or 45 years of life. And then as it ages, it gets thicker. The outer portions of it get more stiff, and it's a little like the rings in a tree. A tree grows, it grows out, it gets all these rings on it. Well, this gets thicker and thicker, and it works less and less well. So perfect vision, you may have perfect vision at a distance up to maybe 40, 45, but it's going to catch you eventually then too. That's just part of being human. Vitreous, I'm not going to go into that a lot. I couldn't really find a good picture. Vitreous is an optical spacer that takes up a lot of the eye. It doesn't have a lot of purpose beyond the eye's development. And a couple pictures of sensors then too. These are just remarkable silicone chips then too, and microprocessors. And so what's the guts inside your camera go well beyond my comprehension then too, because it's really more of a high-tech engineer's tool rather than an optical instrument when it gets to that level. You can see the circuitry boards. Again, pretty outstanding stuff. And the Canon didn't want to, Nikon didn't want to be outdone. So now you have this small camera that's available for you Christmas of 2021. The rumors are it's going to be full frame. I don't know about that then too, but the rumor mill is going here. So very, very lightweight. Inside your camera, again, I'm not going to go into that a lot of detail. It was kind of what was said in the video. You got incoming light, you have the picture elements, and then it breaks them up into different colors then too. It transmits this color, that color, and depending on the sensor, you stimulate the sensor array, transmits the information out. This is a picture of the human retina. Fairly wide angle. With most of our scopes, you can't see that much at a time, but this is about a 45-degree wide angle lens. This is a pretty good picture. There's one that's later on that's a little bit better than this. Your entire retina curves out. It curves out and around and goes not quite all the way to the front, but a good share of the way to the front. This way you can see out about 200 degrees, depends on the person, their facial anatomy, and can see up. Very much unlike your camera that sees simply in a relatively small area unless you got an ultra wide angle lens. So this is the most important area of the eye. That is the paramacula, the macula in the center, and in the middle that's the fovea. This is what you really see with. Without that portion of the eye, your vision is very poor. So this whole retina does not see the way a camera sensor sees. The camera sensor, at least theoretically, has exactly the same sensitivity over the entire sensor. Totally untrue with the eye. The eye sees well in one area, and it learns to move and scan in order to see well in other areas. Thick blood vessels are the veins. The smaller ones, arterioles. Optic nerve head. All the messages from the entire eye, all the wiring diagram comes together into the optic nerve head, and that is transmitted back to the brain. No nerve, no vision. And so the nerve is obviously very important to keep healthy, but it's an incredible diagram. You got 130 million cells back there. They condense this down into somewhere around 1.8 million fibrils that go back through your brain and give you the vision. So pretty fantastic. This is a pretty neat shot here. Probably one of the best I've ever seen of rods and cones. These are, of course, the eye's pixels, they're picture elements, and you've got obviously the ones that are shaped more like cones and more like rods, but these are really extremely small then. So, but that gives you an idea of what they're like. Different color sensors, as they said, for red, green, and blue. And same idea, just a different diagram. Again, so you don't get lost in some of this. The optic nerve head messages going to the brain. The fovea is the very center of the macula. And that's absolutely the best area of vision. And again, probably a little cleaner picture here, so it's a little more distinctive. You've got pigmentation in this area, which is important. And you get less and less, you get more and more pigmentation in most eyes as you go in towards the center. The more you go into the center, the better the vision gets. And right in the very center is the fovea, this area of the macula. And then the rest of it is paramacula, beside macula. If you look at it with a high-powered scope and a young person, it'll look like you're looking at the point of a pin. It's going to reflect back you almost a silver reflection then. And that way, if it does that, it's pretty healthy then. So. But that part of the eye, that's the part of the eye that's most important. And again, we're blending the ideas together of a guy seeing with the cameras. All right, the next few slides I show you will be the most important things that I tell you. And if you don't remember anything at all from this, this is what to remember. It's very hard to diagram out the hill of vision. Hill of vision is what they have simulated here. That very portion of the top, what that is the fovea and the macula. That's where you see the best. The vision starts dropping off. And then as you go more to the outside, it drops off real quickly. It drops off really precipitously. And this has got hills of vision and eyes, but I think it's a horror movie, so we'll skip that one. All right, what do you really see? When you look at something, this guy's got glasses on. This is about what you see clearly. If you're looking at that fellow from that distance, what you're seeing is with the fovea and the macula. So you got a small area that sees just great. The areas around it begin to fall off. You get out in here, you can tell he's got books and this type of thing, but it's just not crisp. It's not good. Why does it not look that way? Because your eye's constantly moving around. It's going to try whatever it's interested in. If it goes to the book will be clear, and you still know the guy's over here, and you live under the illusion that you're seeing it all clearly, which you are definitely not. So center area, you'll find a whole lot of different numbers on these when you look them up. A megapixel count of the eye, it all depends on how you look at it. The clearest, sharpest, they say 7. I've heard 5 to 15. And that is the only part that you really see well with that. So they also have a blind spot indicated here, but I'm not going to go into that. Yep. Okay. And again, same type of concept. It was hard to find photographs that really kind of show you what you're looking at here. Center vision clear, the area around it less clear, and then you fall off into a tremendous amount of basically blur, where you can pick up motion and movement, but you can't pick up detail out there. And this is pretty good because it's going to show you what the human eye does. Again, there's an awful lot of people with suggestions about how many f-stops is the eye good for. They say 10 to 14. Most of them say about 20. It also depends on whether the pupil's adjusting or not. So at any rate, your dynamic range with the eye is greater than you're going to get with any of the cameras that you have at this point. So when the eye looks at this, it focuses on the bright area of the sun setting, and then you'll make a quick movement down here, and this will look clear too. You'll be able to see this. It's not going to be blown out. You won't really pay much attention to this because you just looked at it. The mental image is this. The mental image puts it all together as if it is a single clear image, and none of that, it's all exposed properly. We all know with a camera, if you meter for this, you're not going to get this. All you're going to get is a really dark area. Meter for the light spot, you're going to blow it out. So our mental image is quite different. And that's, I think, especially photographers that are learning run into their issues that way, is they see something, they try to photograph it, and they can't capture the scene. They don't capture the scene well or properly because they just don't have the dynamic range. Another example here. There's your camera, focused, probably focused somewhere in between, but it's shooting almost into the sun, so it's exposing properly for the highlights. And this is really more what your eye sees. You'll pick up the detail here. There's a tree over here, and so you're going to pick up that to some degree. And the only way you're going to simulate that type of thing is probably with an HDR image or with fill flash, something like that. But your eye will see it okay, and your eye will see the basic imaging there. Camera's not going to do that. Okay, megapixels. I mentioned that before. It all depends on how you look at it, because the eye is just so different than the camera. Full resolution, we have about 576 megapixels when somebody cranked out all the math on that to figure that out. Well, yes and no. That's in a single glance, if you looked at absolutely everything with the center vision and just moved it back and forth, picking up all the detail you could possibly do in a scanning motion. That's not how the eye works. But in theory, that's the top number of megapixels you can have. In actuality, it's more like about 10. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of these things in detail. This was the simplest diagram I could find of the human visual system, and I know it doesn't look all that simple then. This is from the top, as if you were looking directly at the visual system, but from the top, cut off the top of somebody's head here. Left and right eye, the fibrils go back through the optic nerve, they split off into other areas, and then they go back through optic radiations to the occipital lobe. Occipital lobe is right here. You see with the back of your head. That's where everything is. Instead of it all being up front in the frontal lobe, where it wouldn't have to make a big trip, it goes all the way through your brain, and you see with the occipital lobe. So it's really a pretty, I mean, it's a fantastic system. I remember neuroanatomy having a brain, human brain that we would work with and have to trace all these optic tracks through. And at the time, it's like, this is just freaking amazing that it works. And I feel exactly the same way today after 40 years of practice. It's just an amazing system. It's also partly why we're curious about everything. You know, sometimes you have to convince people to complete their health form. And, you know, do you have headaches? Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have sudden losses of vision, whatever? And for instance, like a tumor over the optic chiasm here will press down, and it will press on the fibrils, and you're going to lose your side vision to it. So there's, because all this goes right to the brain, pretty much anything that's going on, we're curious about, because we want to know if it's connected with the vision. And almost anything that's happened in the body, blood pressure, out of control, diabetes, whatever, it's going to show up in the eyes. All right, there's your memory card then. So for storage and your photo editing softwares. And the angles, we mentioned that before then too. What angle can people see? They say about 210 degrees. I think it's closer to 200 for most people, which is big. I mean, 180 is straight across. It depends partly on your facial anatomy. If your eyes are real deep set into the orbit, they're not going to see quite that much. But yeah, you have a fantastic field of view. You don't see well over in that area, but you do have a fantastic field of view. They mentioned birds. There are some animals that see all the way around. They're 360, especially if they're prey, like a rabbit. A rabbit can see all the way around itself, and if it doesn't run away, it's not that it doesn't see you, it sees all the way around. Predators, eagles, that's important area of vision, that macula, that fovea, they have two of them. And that way they can scan the ground real quickly. They're much more likely to be able to pick up that mouse when they have the double scanning ability then too. So again, getting off into other critters. Does the eye have a shutter speed? Not really. It takes a while for the nerve cells to be stimulated and to send the messages to the brain. This gets debated on whether you can even call it any kind of shutter speed. It's not really, you know, your blinking doesn't produce a shutter or anything, but it's somewhere between a 30th and a 60th of a second. If you get something moving faster than that, it's either going to blur or it'll appear continuous. Video runs approximately 1/30th of a second. You see a continuous, just as you do in the movies. It's not, you don't see 30 frames, you just see a continuous movement of action. If you can demonstrate this by putting your hand out and then just begin to move it, and then move it real quickly. Look at your fingertips, they blur. And that's because you're exceeding that 30th of a second then. So the eye will keep up with it up to that point, and past that, it can't. Dynamic range. We're going to go into more how some of this stuff applies directly to the camera and to the photographs that you're taking. So dynamic range, EV values, the exposure values. And that's got them all pretty well listed. I think I'll start at the bottom then, to your printed images and your JPEG images. They don't have a real wide dynamic range. They may be adequate for what you have. Prints are always tough because if you have a real wide dynamic range, you probably will have a heck of a time printing that image then too. We've all done it. We've all printed things, and gosh, it really looked good on the computer screen. And you think you did everything, and you get the print, and you think, gee, that's kind of dull, and there's no detail at all in the shadows, kind of blowing out the highlights, etc. So using the raw files, and of course that's why they tell you to use the raw files so that you have a wider range. Pupil adjustment happens all the time, so it's kind of hard to tell what the eye's dynamic range is. Like I said, they usually come up with a number about 20. This is without the pupil adjusting at all. And this is with the quick movements and the pupil adjusting. So again, your eye can cover much more dynamic range than anything else now, as far as our photography gear. I'm not going to go into this in detail. The stereo vision, we shoot, everything gets compressed into 2 dimensions, and we understand that then too, that we have to create the 3rd dimension by other things that we do. And again, I'm not even going to try to explain this in any detail. The thing that's important is that the eyes are about 65 millimeters apart, and they will see slightly different images. They don't see exactly the same, and you can cover an eye and do this, and you can see that there's some movement of that image. They don't see the same image. They see the same image, but they see it from different vantage points. And that difference is enough to give you a sense of dimension and depth. So it's a pretty fantastic system. Works better close up than it does far away. And they argue all the time about it's only good to 18 feet. And some people, sometimes they argue it's good to 0.8 of a mile. And you know, all depends on the mathematics that you're kind of going through. It works better close up than far away. Okay. And again, what I was talking about before, photography compresses the 3D world into 2 dimensions. So we have to do something else to bring out those other dimensions then. So lighting, shadows, it all assists in giving us that illusion of 3 dimensions then. So this is the Hocking Hills, and obviously near sunset, the long shadows, very beneficial for giving you the sense of depth. The eye does some interesting things, and when it comes to a hard edge, and what I mean by that is an edge that is bright and dark, black and white, it amplifies that edge. I took this picture, and the first thing I noticed with it is the beak. I'm talking about 3 dimensions. The beak looks like it's in 3 dimensions, even though it's only in 2. And the reason it stands out the way it does is it has black all the way around the edges. And because of that, the eye amplifies those edges. And by doing that, it gives it almost an odd 3-dimensional look then too. Most of the time when we take pictures like that, we don't end up with that much of an effect. All right, evolution or de-evolution, we're not sure if the trip was worthwhile. Looking at this guy's tattoo, and he's got himself the eye in the pyramid then. So so I'll let you decide whether that tattoos are worth getting or not then too. But I don't know. I'm not gonna put an eye tattoo on my hand. Pinhole glasses. I don't know how many of you, about every 10 years, these get real popular, and you find them at state fairs, and they ship them through the mail, and they advertise them all over the place. And pinhole glasses sort of work. You take your glasses off, put pinhole glasses on, and you'll look through the pinholes, and you think, you know, I do see better with these. Of course, they block most of your visual field. And despite the claims of the sellers, they're not going to relax your eyes, and they don't cure your refractive error. I heard a professor over at Ohio State say, and so I'm paraphrasing him, if you're interested in testing the concept, he recommended that you don't buy the glasses, but you buy a saltine cracker, and you can look through all the holes until you get bored, and then you can eat the cracker. So they kind of put that in the appropriate dumper. Why is this important? Well, we had pinhole cameras at one time, no lenses. It was the pinhole that did the job. So very simply, light gets refracted to a point, and it's more complex than they show you here. Light that goes through the dead center of the pupil, all the way down in, all the way to the macula. It doesn't get bent. It doesn't get focused. It doesn't get refracted. The central light is always in better focus than peripheral light. As it goes out further and further, it gets more and more complex to focus the light. So your center light pinholes, small apertures give you more depth of field. You get more depth of field because you have a small aperture. And that is really all it is. The pinholes work, but $50, I don't really recommend purchasing them then. So, and the center light, it's naturally pretty much in perfect focus. And you can try that sometime when nobody's looking at you, and you can make just a little pinhole like this, and then kind of look around the room, take your glasses off, and you're going to take it away. You're going to say, man, I could see better that way. So I don't recommend buying the pinhole glasses though. Your apertures, this is pretty much something everybody knows then too. The hole lets the light in, and the larger the aperture, the more light you're going to let in. Smaller aperture, especially when you start getting way down past f11, and it depends on other features too. But the smaller the hole, the more diffraction you're going to get. This is also the same idea. Unfortunately, people didn't know the difference between depth of field and depth of focus, but basically the idea is fine. Big aperture, big hole, letting the light in. Shallow depth of field, which would be on this end. Depth of focus is in the camera. Depth of field is in the field, shall we say, then too, in the outer areas. But you end up with a shallow depth of field because of the complexity of what you're focusing. Small aperture, again, taking the center light, you're simply naturally in better focus. So you have a larger depth of focus, or out here, a larger depth of field. So small apertures give you that depth of field just because that light's in better focus. It's naturally in focus, especially, I mean, the perfect centered light is basically in perfect focus because it just goes straight in. It doesn't get bent. Now, I don't know if Nikon's really putting out surface to air missiles like this then too, but I found this picture, and the guy looks a little overburdened, and I guess I'd recommend a tripod if you really had it then too. I looked up Nikon lenses. I couldn't find anything remotely that big. So, and anybody that has Nikon, let me know if that's not a composite. I think it has to be then. Okay, photographic composition. This is sort of the application of all the things we've been talking about. And these are techniques that have been developed over time. These weren't developed for photographers. These were developed for artists going back essentially forever. And like I said, it's just not for photography. It's how the eye and the brain react to an image. So all these rules we have are because we're human and because our eyes work in a certain way. Those are basically the rules of art, but it's only because we're human beings and we're observing them. So I'm not going to go into a lot of these in a lot of detail, but I will hit a few of these. These are some of the basics: point of view, leading the lines. I'll talk about some geometric shapes. Most of these, you know, lighting, color. I added a few radiating lines, which I think have a lot of visual impact. High contrast, busyness is what I call it. And then just something that's kind of puzzling or mysterious then. So these are all things that the human vision is going to be attracted to. So we'll do leading lines. Those are leading lines all the way up and over. And you can start wherever you want to, but those will lead you either up the stairs, down the stairs, or in the middle. This was in an aquarium in Atlanta. Atlanta has a huge new aquarium. Well, it was new when we went 10 years ago. No strong lines here, but the light isn't really, I push the light hard, it's leading lines down to the main subject area. It's not sun, it looks like it's sunlight, but it was just a very powerful incandescent above that. Leading lines, well, these are pretty obvious too. Why does the eye need these? Well, why do we want to lead the eye? Because you only see well with one portion of your eye. So wherever you want to start, whether you want to start here and go down or the opposite direction, it's still going to lead you. You only see well with one portion of the eye, you bring it down and you're going to be led into the picture. And same thing here, again, from whichever direction you go, primarily people are going to go from what's closest to them then too. So take the planks down. White too helps lead you into the image then. But we only get to see one portion at a time. And so leading lines lead us into the image then too. And if our eyes were like a camera sensor, we'd take the whole thing in at once and the leading lines wouldn't mean anything to us until we wouldn't need them, we wouldn't use them. And again, similar type concept, you got color and you've got the strong leading lines taken at night, of course, the Eiffel Tower. You get rid of the color and it's still pretty interesting. Detail wise, actually the color is pretty good. But again, you got leading lines either direction then too. And it's kind of up to the person to decide if they think one image is stronger than the other. This is leading lines. This was at, let me look this up, Martha's Vineyard, sometime back then too, towards dusk. And will lead us out to our boat. Hocking Hills, similar type concept. It kind of everything leads you in here. There is a little path up here, which is probably not material, but the path is sort of a leading line. You have the path, you have the water, which is really not flowing or anything, but after the rain, and the rocks, again, all leading you into the same area. Whether you take a look through here or you go around the edges, it's leading you in. So again, the eye doesn't have to be led, but that's why it's done. Same type of thing. By the way, the last one was an HDR. This is a high dynamic range, also fairly strong with the sky. And it leads you in one way or the other. You can go to the beach or you can go off-roading up in here, but it brings you in, and the sky also does, brings you in towards the horizon. This young lady, I was taking some pictures of the beach, and this is in St. John, one of the Virgin Islands. And she starts to walk into the picture, and then she calls to me and apologizes for ruining my picture. And I said, that's fine, just keep going. And of course, she didn't really ruin the picture, she really made the picture then too. So, and again, your leading line of the beach, and we always have a propensity to look for human beings, whether it's facial features, which are probably the strongest pull that we have, or other aspects of the human. And again, leading lines, this, probably a lot of you have seen, this is up at Marblehead along Lake Erie. So you got the fence, you got white too. So the white is really pretty strong, bringing you into the lighthouse. Leading lines, and I would put this into the illusion category. I don't know how many of you have seen this before. I call it up or down staircase. And when you look at it, which one is it? Is this my son? Is he going up? Is he going down? And it's inside a very high-tech, very interesting Mercedes museum over in Stuttgart in Germany. So he's going down. There was a little rest in here where there wasn't a step, and so I added the step because I wanted to make more of an illusion out of it then. So But again, eyes can be fooled, and this, you can interpret this more than one way. This is in Bavaria, and it's got a lot of things the eye likes. It's got triangles. This is a triangle. This is not only diagonal, but it's a triangle, and it pulls you into, I always have to look up the name of this place. It's not really that hard to pronounce. Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, which is southern Germany. So, and then the sky, interesting. And I don't know if you can see this on what you're viewing here, here. Those are hang gliders. So those are crazy Bavarian Germans who have just kind of jumped off the edge of the cliff and are in the background. So again, strong image along the diagonals. The eye likes diagonals, it likes triangles. And here, and again, another case of diagonals, IMPs, glass pyramid, but you also have this entire fountain as a diagonal. And again, we're brought into faces to human beings, attracted the eyes. I think probably the first thing you're going to see is this fellow. I don't think he fell in or anything. I didn't see him later, but again, maybe not a great shot, but it's just it's interesting then. And again, it uses a lot of the leading lines, but it's also the attraction of the human being, the human face. And again, human face here. A lot of shots from the hip in a Jamaican schoolhouse where they had several different grades together. I was never sure if we were allowed to take pictures or not, but I did literally shoot from the hip, and I got a few good ones then too, but she was very cute. And no real strong leading lines, again, just kind of moving you straight into picture here. This is my son. It's at Anthem in Chautauqua. It's an old hotel from the 1870s, and just a really nice thing. So we felt after walking around it and the way he was dressed, we went to a wedding before. It kind of was the Great Gatsby look. So again, kind of pulling you in then to the facial features. And this is Rochelle. She's my niece. It was about 10 years ago where she was married. White, again, white is strong in the picture, so that pulls you in. Very nice soft light when you're photographing a wedding and it's many, many miles away in a place you've never visited. You're not sure what you're going to get. But we did manage to get a few shots with a window with diffused light. And so that worked out pretty nicely in this case then. So, and again, the attraction of the detail in the dress, the facial draw is important. And of course, like I say, white almost always will pull the eye in. And this is the same wedding. She's hugging my mother. I think it's just a very sweet expression she has on her face. My mother said she was giving me her best side, so I don't know about that then too, but that was her comment on it. So, and again, another wedding shot, different wedding then. So drawn in partly by the height, but a lot by the white all the way through. And then you had the bridesmaids in the background and the flower girls in the front. So just kind of a sweet shot, and again, kind of takes you all the way through with leading lines. We're going to get into photos that are a little different. They're maybe not classic photos by any means. This was taken at the Columbus Zoo. Most of you have probably been there and been in that underground area where they have a nice viewing area of the polar bears right above us if they decide to go in and swim in, this type of thing. So I did take a few shots under there. It's horrible with all the reflections that you're getting from the people next to you and etc. I never really thought much of the photo, but I did get a chance to enter it in a photo crowd contest. That's one of the international groups that I belong to. And I thought it was horrible from the standpoint of technically So I cleaned it up somewhat. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. Black and white didn't show the color. And so I thought that was good. It didn't show the color of bleeds and etc. So I put it in, and to my surprise, it really did very well. And I tried to figure out why, you know, why does something that's far from perfect technically do well? Point of view. Point of view is so important. We've heard that in a lot of other lectures. And if you have an interesting point of view, sometimes everything else is not all that important. Most people don't have a picture of a polar bear swimming underwater. And if they do, it's not from below the polar bear and to the side. And that's, I think, what made it popular then too, is not technically great, but it certainly had a point of view that was different than almost anything else you're going to see. So always keep in mind that point of view is really important. Busyness and high contrast. All right, how busy is that? I like the colors. I'll let you look at it for a while. Anybody got a headache yet? It's too busy. It's just too much going on. You can't even say there's leading lines because it's just all over the place then too. So the eyes run into this, but then it has a problem looking at it. It just has a problem. It's not comfortable to view. This one, I took a number of shots, and this was in the Everglades. And I worked on a number of different ways. It's busy, but it's not so busy you can't look at it. It's got the Spanish moss, the root system. Overall, I like the shot. It's people like it or they don't. There's not a whole lot of in between, but it's busy without being too much of a problem. But again, it's a challenge for the eye. The eye may not, you may look at that and say, and just go on to something else. Too busy, in my opinion. The branches are all over the place. You can go down to a single point, a single line if you want to, which I call radiating lines, just from the center here and out. But there's no, there's not really that much center of focus. I don't think it's easy to look at, and I think in that respect, it's probably would be dismissed by most people. This is the outside of the Titanic Museum in Belfast. The whole front is shaped like a ship, and this is its external covering, its external skin. And it's really quite beautiful. It's sort of a modern art type thing, but it's very nice. So I switched it here, high contrast, black and white. So you've got strong blacks, you've got some pretty complete whites, lots of shades of gray. Look at it for a while. I think it's really hard to look at. You can glance at it, it's not too bad, but I don't think it's anything you want to put up in your wall. Much easier to view. And again, this is the eye making contrast. This is the eye going to the edge here and saying, oh, that ought to be a stronger contrast. Oh, here it's black, here it's white. Let's make it stronger. And in that kind of situation, I think it's a headache more than it is anything else. Interesting perhaps, but I don't think most people are going to be able to look at that for very long. So again, busyness. Point sources of light, radiating lines. Again, this is something that the eye likes to follow. And you've got your 1 point, and this was on the island of St. John as I was hiking down to one of the beaches, cleaned it up then too. It had some imperfections in it, but it kind of almost like exploding look where it moves outward. The eye will be intrigued by that type of thing. This was on the side of a fishing boat that was pretty darn rusty. It was called Sunshine. I worked on a little bit, but again, it's sort of that radiation, that explosion outward. White and bright. Human eye is naturally attracted to the whitest, brightest portion of the image. And that's why if you have a secondary portion of that image, such as background, it can be really distracting if you have anything that's too bright or too white. I like this being a supernova, but it's really just a picture of the moon through clouds, pretty heavy cloud cover then. So, but first thing it pulls you in is the white, and then you start looking at the edges around you. And again, that's what the eye gets attracted to. White. Pretty neat sky. You've even got a few of the unusual clouds that you sometimes see in some mountainous areas in Scotland. They're sort of semi-lenticular clouds. This area is known for being socked in heavy clouds, and this is Loch Ness. And this is part of Ukahart Castle that's been built and destroyed and built and destroyed a number of times since the 1200s. But it just had a fantastic sky. So that's nothing added in that sky. It's just the contrast, the dark night filter I used on it. Again, bringing you in. Color brings you in. White will bring you in. I think the gold brings you in perhaps more than anything else here. Photographing a wedding, I saw this across the room, and I knew it would be gone within a second or two. I took the shot. I've had to work on it pretty hard to make it a useful shot because I had to crop it down quite a bit. She is the daughter of the groom, and the preacher was the father of the groom. So she's in white. She got the white little beads in her hair. And again, reaching up for the cross. I entered that in a contest, and one of the judges wrote like 3 paragraphs on interpreting this. So it's up to you. I take the picture. I'll let somebody else decide what they want to read into the picture. But it's been a very popular one. So, but go on real quick then too. Sometimes you have to take that first shot. It may not be any good, but that is sometimes the only shot you get. Color brings you in. I'm drawn almost immediately to the blue just because it's different from the red. Of course, whites will bring in. That is a pub in Dublin after we went to kiss the Blarney Stone, which everybody was in line for, so we didn't do it. Aerial view, Hawaii, super high contrast, and you have the waves being almost totally whited out. So again, high contrast is of interest. Some people like it, some people don't in this picture. Ultra high contrast, it actually goes all the way up and down. Oops, let's go back to it. So I thought the high contrast is interesting. The white brings you in. You've got, you have to look where the actual door is. It's placed way back in here, but it was open. I took color pictures of it, of course, to begin with. Some people say T shapes are interesting, or L shape. That's what that is too. But super high contrast, sort of a minimalism concept. Sailing on dark water, same concept. Real high contrast, and the water extremely dark. I didn't totally make it black. I wanted some recognition that you were in the water. And that's one I took many years ago, and stories are interesting. This tells a story, but I have no idea what the story is, and neither does anybody else then. So, and I think it's interesting the left thumb is missing too. It's sort of there, but not really. So, but at any rate, I don't think I'd want my door painted that way, but that's the way it was. Point of view. A lot of you seen pictures of the Arizona Memorial in Hawaii, on Oahu, at Pearl Harbor. It's a pretty memorial, but again, taking it from a little different point of view, getting the flag in at that angle, and going to another point of view where you have the oil that is still being expelled after it was 78 years, 80 years now, from the Arizona. After its destruction, it's still seeping oil after all those years. So, and again, you can read your interpretations into that. Oil and water don't mix, like I told you before. That's the way it is in the eye. Straight up, point of view. A lot of people don't know what this is. This is the Eiffel Tower from straight underneath. You can't shoot all the way up because there's platforms and et cetera that break it up then. So, but it's somewhat unusual perspective on the Eiffel Tower, and I think that makes it interesting to again get a little different point of view, quite a different point of view from most shots taken. That's just bizarre. taken from the cruise ship as we went by. Really nice home and not a whole heck of a lot of land. I think there was a landing area for a boat on the other side. So, but again, you get into sort of the unusual, and that attracts the eye, the unusual or the bizarre. Again, taken at a wedding, you've got a situation where you got point of view. White in the background, but point of view is, I think, the real interesting thing here. So, and I got up on the second floor and these guys cooperated. So this is Bigfoot, who has just left the lake. So that's my version of interpretation on this photograph. It's nice and grainy, so I made it that way. So if you're looking for Bigfoot pictures, I've got a few here. So now, really, it was just one guy ran down, jumped in the water, and his big heavyset friend ran after him. I took the picture, and by the time I got done, it looked like something crawling out of the water then. So, and again, my interpretation, you'll like it or you won't. Again, the bizarre or the unusual, it tells a story, but I have no idea what that story is then. So this was in the Caribbean, and he was swimming his horse along and quite a ways from land. And I don't know that would be a shortcut or anything. And we never got close enough to ask him, but just different. And this lady zebra, I call it. I don't have her hair on this then too, but it's a dress, and she had it all in the very elaborate zebra patterns and folds and this type of thing. So I took a few pictures of the dress and just kind of altered it. And again, mystery. And then you've got some very interesting things here, but top and bottom, somebody had a sense of humor in the Orkney Islands. And so, although I would love to take the bottom thing off and put it at the top, but I didn't want to do jail up there then too. So, but actually interesting with all the building rock and etc. This guy had a fair, his life on his hand. I shot from the hip. I'm a pretty big guy, but I wasn't going to go stick my camera in this guy's face then. So, but again, point of view, from that point of view, it makes him look even bigger than he was. And light coming down, you got the white. This is in the Panama Canal. It was overcast the whole day and raining, and then it started opening up a little bit, which was nice. This is at the zoo. It was a nice platform, had two of the leopards on it, and they were a fair distance from the mesh fence. I managed to find an area where I could stand back enough so I could get the fence totally out of focus, go to manual on everything, including the focus, and then just took a whole series of shots then. So a lot of work in masking and etc. But I thought he looked rather regal, and it was kind of one of those unusual times. So if the fence is too close, you're not going to get any kind of shot from either if you're too close or they're too close, or either one of you then too. But it turned out nicely. Depth of field, we talked about that a little bit before then too. Very shallow depth of field, and right in through here. And then you've got the field of sunflowers as it goes out of focus. Aerial view, point of view, again, taken obviously from an airplane. Everybody's seen the picture of Diamond Head. This portion of it, not a lot of people have never seen the picture of the fact that it is Diamond Head crater, and an extinct crater then too. Waikiki over in here. You've got Honolulu as it spreads out, the mountains. And fortunately, you can actually see some of the peaks of the mountains, that the clouds have not settled in. They settle in later in the day, and you won't see anything of the peaks. And point of view with a dog. These are my three cats. Well, actually, two cats in my wife's hair. Again, I like that, but I don't think it's a contest winner. Hawaii. This fellow was on the beach, and very interesting. He apparently had been there many times before, feeding the birds. He went out in the water, extended out his arms. And this is not something you see in most portions of the world. It's not that uncommon in Hawaii in certain areas then too. If the birds are used to getting fed by hand, especially by certain people, they will come. But again, most people in the world, this is a novelty. Fire hydrant, yeah, I don't know what to tell you about that one then too. So again, another one of those obvious signs then too, but I find that kind of tongue in cheek. Three garçons, restaurant. I have no idea if those are real blue jeans. I really want to know, but I can't really tell. And they use them as planters, and it's just an interesting balance, an interesting symmetry, and just something you just don't see anywhere else. So that was in Quebec City. All right, bad name for this one, Behind the Eight Ball. Tattoos a lot of places. I guess that's the only 8-ball one I ever saw. And my son, again, point of view, falling off the edge of the earth on the mountain Haleakala on Maui. And well, we always like that shot. It's not every day you're standing on the ground, but you're above the clouds. And composite, again, you can kind of get off into fantasy land with some of this then too, with the sunrise and the moonrise at the same time. It's off of one of the Caribbean islands. This one I liked because I thought you couldn't possibly put anything on it but red. It had to be red. And I switched it, played around with the black and white. I was surprised how well it showed up with the white. I still prefer the red, but and it's interesting. This is the Fireman's Festival. This was in Utica at the Ice Cream Festival. And I guess what I like about it best is something I never saw to begin with. I like the dirt. It's got dirt on the index finger and on the thumb. And I thought that's just a kid all the way then too. So, all right, we're getting off into some bizarre stuff. This is technically all wrong. I don't know why I like it, but I do. Boys' room over here, but it's it has a cone in front of it. The bar for later on. People eating over here, trying to get the sun blocked. I don't know what this is. I mean, I've never seen a gas tank that big, but maybe that's it. He's not working under the hood of his car. He's just inside, and you got to hold that area. So is it technically good? No, it's technically garbage. Do I like it? Yeah, I kind of like it. I don't know why. And here's another one where talk about the background overpowering the foreground. It definitely does. The eye is pulled to your background. Leading lines to nowhere, so that does you no good. She was a vendor, and I just got a shot, another shot from the hip, and I thought her expression was interesting. The background is detracting, definitely. So again, not a classic shot by any means. I like the shot, but it's not going to be a contest winner. How about fisheye lenses? If you need any fisheye lenses, this lady will very definitely provide them for you here. The eye and the camera, combining together. Okay, I thank you for attending my eye presentation. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer those.
Any questions out there, guys?
I don't know if it's a question, Rick. You there? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. You know, when you're shooting from the hip or flip the back, the viewfinder down, what am I thinking of? But
Sure,
anyway,
sure,
when
the LCD screen.
LCD screen, you're using two eyes and all that applies. But then when you look through the viewfinder, you're only using one eye. I don't have a question yet, but I don't know. People have a master eye. They tend to look through there with one or the other.
Dominant eye. And can everybody hear me okay? I went off the other portion of it then too. My voice coming through?
I can hear you fine, Rick.
Okay, good. Yeah, most people have a dominant eye. It doesn't always go along with your dominant hand though. It does maybe 2/3 of the time, but you have a sighting eye. It's the eye that you would take a gun and shoot with. You know, maybe right, maybe left. I had patients do sighting just through a couple little simple things that I would have them do to see whether or not how they would sight, and that way I kind of knew what to do sometimes in contacts if I had to bias one eye towards distance and one eye for near. So, but yeah, you have a dominant eye of a sighting eye, and so that's not an uncommon thing. So
There's a question in the chat for you, Rick. from Donnie Robertson. He says, if eye lens changes size to maintain focus, how does cataract surgery to replace the lens help? Is the new lens flexible enough to keep focus?
As far as after, I'm sorry, was that after cataract surgery?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, the cataract surgery, you put a fixed lens in its place. So there are some bifocal concepts are generally done in a different way. They're not done enough so it flexes. They've got a whole lot of ideas. It's a holy grail if anybody can come up with something that's great. They even have lenses that are attached to the muscles, and the lenses can move a little bit. That you can actually set up systems which are done in a binocular mode or done in kind of a circular type mode where you have aspherics. There's all sorts of complex optics you can put in. The problem is putting it in a human eye. If it doesn't work, what are you going to do? The person will probably get used to it, but you got to take, if they don't get used to it, you got to take it out. So most of the doctors will stick with simple lens systems. And if a person was used to maybe having one eye for close up, or maybe they want both eyes more for the close up, they'll set them up that way. Multifocal systems work, but you have to learn to work them. And so far, nobody's come up with a system where you could actually change the shape of the lens. There's all sorts of things they're doing. There's eye drops that they've used over the years trying to make the lens more flexible. Eventually they'll find something they can implant that will be consistent and will work well. But it's, like I say, it's a holy grail, and there's a lot of options, but nobody's really there yet.
Rick, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm the one that sent you an email earlier today asking if you knew Dr. Sabula.
Yes.
And I had surgery last year in my right eye. I had a malignant neoplasm in my right eye.
You did?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's extremely rare.
Yeah, that it is. And I have serious retinal detachment. Well, in all actuality, I can see pretty good, but I used to be right eye dominant.
Okay.
If I hold my thumb out, in over an object, and I close my right eye, it stays covered. If I close my left eye, so
yeah, it's a matter of sighting, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the best eye that's dominant, but yeah. And as time goes along, the brain will adjust. You've got monocular cells in the brain, you've got binocular cells. The binocular cells, that's why you see better with both eyes open than you do each eye individually, assuming you have pretty normal vision. So one eye runs certain monocular cells, the other eye runs others, and then there's a binocular where they join together. So dominance can change, the brain can change its dominance. And it's like if you had two TVs and one was always kind of blurry, would you eventually start watching the other TV all the time? That's what you would do. Vision's a brain thing, and you're capable of switching. How soon or how quick that'll happen is a hard one to say. So how are you doing? Did they put there's a plaque they can put in, which is a high radiation plaque.
That's what they did.
Okay. Well, you're the second person I know, and I've been in practice a long time, who had it done then too. So how are things looking? Did it shrink the tumor?
Well, as far as I know, it's gone. So
it's fantastic.
I
Yeah.
still have a detached retina, or detached retina. So kind of the question I have is, I have real good peripheral vision.
Good.
But the more fine focus area, I don't have the depth of field that I used to have.
Yes. Because the vision's not as good in one eye as the other. So you're going to lose some of that 3D depth perception then. So what have they said anything about repairing it?
I'll see her for Friday. So
okay. Okay. Now, I mean, the only reason I know about her is because she has a very narrow specialty, and I have one family that's where the dad died of it. We saw him, and his eye was just full of tumor. There was nothing else. And that was 30 years ago. Treatments were real limited. Basically, at that point, you know, they did everything they could, but you were looking at somebody that wasn't going to make it, especially with something that advanced. Now the treatments are good, and the lady I know that had it done a few years back, last I knew, she's doing fine. So excellent. And
What was fortunate, I caught it early.
good, excellent.
I mean, think of COVID, you know, and shutting things down, especially, you know, not necessary surgeries and stuff.
Right.
I was able to go to my optometrist. He sent me to Midwest Retina, and they
Okay.
couldn't help me, so they sent me to the Havner Eye Institute, and they took care of me. I mean, everything happened within a couple months.
Those, I tell you how rare they are. When I sent my first one on to a local ophthalmologist to confirm what I had, he'd been in practice for about 25 years, and all he sees is sick eyeballs. He'd never seen one. That's how rare it is. But you know, you catch it early, there are treatments, and sounds like you're on the right road. So that's excellent.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I do have another question though. Do you know if a name PJ Sane he has to do with ophthalmological photography?
I know the name. I've never had any patients go to him, so all I know is the name.
He's not a doctor. He's an ophthalmological photographer. He's retired now, and he and I were together in the Toledo Camera Club years ago.
Really? Okay, interesting.
And that's how I got to know him. He was in college at the time.
Mhm.
And
Okay. Oh, very good. I know the name. The thing is, was practicing in Springfield. I'm so far away that the only people I would refer to over there were usually subspecialists. If I could refer in town, I would. Sometimes people would not want to go to subspecialists because it was out of town. So you got to know people by reputation, and certainly when I knew the surgeons in the area well enough to say, okay, who would you send this person to? And you know, we keep track of talent that way, or we did. I did before I retired.
well, thank you.
Sure enough. What else we got here, Roberta?
Rick, I've got a question. I'm getting a new pair of glasses. I always thought that their transition, you know, the top for far vision, the middle, and then the bottom for close reading. And I always thought the close reading, you're dealing with a lens that went all the way across. And then my sister's works at the glasses store, and you know, it just for your close reading, it was just she drew a line that went from top to bottom, kind of right under your eye, and it wasn't all the way across. I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's because of optical distortions. When you're looking at this, you're talking about the so-called no-line bifocal, or they call it
Right.
the progressive addition lens, which means
Yeah.
it's strong. That's why you don't see a division then too. They're shaped roughly like a vase is shaped, where you have, when you get out of the distance portion, you get into a corridor, and some corridors are wider than others, and then they fatten out towards the bottom. The thing that you run into is that you still have all the laws of optics. You're trying to make a really excellent optic here, but you can't help but distort optics out to the side. They are better and better and better, just like all computer designs. They make them and they make them, and until eventually they figure out ways of reducing it. But now some of them are wider than others. Yeah, and some are known for wide intermediate corridors and this type of thing. But no, they're not going to go all the way across the bottom. But that's not a portion. Far left, far right is really not a portion you're going to use a whole lot either.
For reading.
Yeah, you're not going to sit there and look way hard to the left and hold the book over there. You can't see
Right.
it now. You're
Right.
not seeing it anyway. That too.
That did make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So there, and getting minimal distortions is a great thing. It's just like, you know, it's just like camera lenses. You've got, you got good, better, and best camera lenses, and I think a lot of companies don't make garbage. You know, they make good lenses. It's just that they make better and better lenses, and So, it depends what you want to get into as far as lenses go. There's a lot of high end stuff, and it is better optically. But if you're satisfied with what you have, then you don't need to spend the extra money. So, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. But yeah, that's what you run into, and that's going to be the case in all progressive lenses. Then some just have less distortion to the side than others.
Yeah,
Rick,
thanks.
there's another question in the chat. Karen wants to know, is using a UV flashlight for photography dangerous to the eyes?
You're talking about, I'm sorry, UV flash or UV?
Yeah, she says she used it to make flowers glow and to find caterpillars at night.
Probably there's not going to be any problem with that. It's like, are lasers harmful? Well, the lasers that are sold legally are, I wouldn't sit there and stare at them for 20 minutes, but they're low powered enough, they're going to cause any problems. Same with that UV light. It should be safe enough that you're not going to have any issues from it at all. There are, of course, off-market things, and there's always some kid that decides he's got to buy a high-powered laser or something like that. And yeah, if it's one that can burn a hole in the wall, then it's probably not a good idea. But I would say probably, as long as it's available easily commercially, and you're not just staring at the thing, you're going to be fine.
Okay, and then Lori said, awesome talk, very interesting. Thank you, Rick. So very good talk. Thank you, Rick. I wish I could have seen more of your pictures, but if you guys want to see more pictures from Rick, you can go to his website, which was in the announcement. Any other questions for Rick? Hopefully relating to photography, but you can ask him eye questions too.
Yeah, my email's out there then too, and the things I sent today. So if there's something that you wanted to, send me out, that's fine. I know sometimes it's you get a bunch of people you don't necessarily want to ask a question then too. So, but remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question as long as it's sincere. A sincere question, patients say, "Oh, this is a stupid question." I said, "No, not as long as you're sincere and you really want to know the answer. It's not stupid." So.
Got some great photographs. The ones that I put in the announcement, I would have loved for you to talk about those, especially that old guy with the cigar in his mouth. That's a really cool photo.
Yeah, I got a couple of those. That was an old guy in Havana. There were a few of these fellas, and they especially had two cameras around your neck. They'd kind of give you the nod and wave at you and this type of thing. And if I had the time to stop, and then I'd get them to pose, and they knew what it was all about. And I'd give them a cook. That is the foreign currency. That is $1. When you only earn $20 a month, that's a hell of a lot of money, actually. But so
Yeah.
so, but it's fun. There's most of the time I take candids and I don't pay somebody, but he was pretty cooperative. So
Berta,
That
may
one
I
of
ask a
one of
question?
oh, sorry, someone was asking a question.
Hey, thank you. But if you have a question, go ahead.
Is this a good time?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm a fairly new member, Jim Shaw, and I love that you're doing this. I looked at Rick's website, and I wanted to let him know that I loved his images, and I really like that he's very eclectic in what he shoots, because we talk a lot about developing a style, but I've never been able to do that, and I just like to see people who have diverse interests. But
yeah.
my question is, first of all, does he see any benefits to shooting through the optical viewfinder as opposed to the LCD? That's number one. And number two is, I have saved a lot of money in photography by using a lot of old film lenses that were top of the line in their day. And I'm very happy with the images, but you read that there are benefits to the digitally designed lenses. And does it maybe is a question more specific to a physicist answer, but does Rick have any opinion on this idea that there's actually something in the way that the light is delivered to the sensor from a digital lens as opposed to an old film lens?
Well, I guess you got a difference in your technology. And if are you using old film lenses on digital backs then, on digital cameras?
Yes.
Okay, well, of course, they weren't designed. One was not designed for the other. It would probably have to depend on the, well, you know, if they were designed for basically a full frame sensor for a 35 millimeter. Optically, I'm not sure how to answer that then too, because I've never seen an actual comparison of the two. It makes sense that time-wise, the technology has given us better lenses from an optical standpoint, from a weight standpoint, and this type of thing. So it's logical that you're going to find sharper lenses that were designed to be used with the newest of sensors. That I would say it's more a matter of probably technology and time than it is anything else then.
Well,
But getting good images.
the
And
discussion
we all know,
on
we all know the focus, you know, the quality of the optics is only, that's part of it, but it's only up to a point. I mean, you can pick all you want, but I mean, you can get awfully good pictures with kit lenses too. So.
Well, and that's my experience too. The discussion I read on this topic actually said that a digital lens, due to the depth of the well of any given pixel on the sensor, delivers the light in a straighter line, so that it gets the sensor is able to read the light better. This whole idea of straightening out the light to get into those channels just didn't. It didn't line up with the whole idea of a focal plane.
Yeah, and I really don't have an answer for you on that then too. So I mean, if you're getting good images with what you're doing, I guess I really wouldn't worry about it. I mean, anyway, you're shooting on a flat plane, but of course, film is not going to be quite the same as a sensor, as far as it's. I don't imagine their thicknesses are the same. So there's going to be some subtle differences there, but yeah, it just shoot what works. You know, what works for the camera company is to sell you something new and tell you it's better, but that's, you know, that's not all.
Yeah. Some of it's hype.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I have no style at all. So I photograph what I find interesting, and there's almost no rhyme or reason to it. Whereas some people, it's very distinctive. You can look at their pictures, and I can say, you know, 90% certain this is so and so's shot. But no, I photograph what I find interesting. So,
and I appreciated that.
I was just gonna say, Rick, with that one of Hocking Hills, just really, that was phenomenal. What did you do HDR on that one?
that was not, the original shot was not HDR. I did composite in the sky because the sky was kind of bland. I also printed it, and that goes right along with the EV value of a print only being about 8. So I printed it, and it didn't look nearly as good. So
Wow.
because you had too black on the shadows, sky wasn't quite right, and you know I did everything I can to stretch the EV on the print, and it's probably never going to print as well as it
Yeah.
will.
As a digital image, it just popped off the page. That was
Digital is better.
amazing.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, sometimes I run a single shot through Aurora, which is an HDR program, and they will help expand that out for you so that you can get a little bit more of an HDR effect. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't. You can do all the same on your own. It's just going to take probably quite a bit longer. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, people seem to like that one. Pretty is something people tend to be attracted to, as long as it's pretty. That brings in a lot of people that maybe won't study the photograph at all.
Well, you drew in a good crowd tonight. You had 42 people, Rick.
Great. Okay, that sounds wonderful then too. So
Yeah, I didn't know if you were paying attention to that, but a lot of people.
How high the number went up. That's great.
It's almost 9 o'clock, but any more questions for Rick?
Well, I hope it wasn't too heavy. There was a lot in there, and I actually, Roberta, I took your idea of using more of my photographs because I wasn't going to really use that much, but I think maybe that was a better way of demonstrating things then too. So, so at any rate, now you're all so understanding now that you'll never end up taking that bad photo again, right?
Wrong.
Liars. All right. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Rick. I appreciate
Thanks,
it
Rick.
very much.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Good night,
Thanks a lot.
everybody.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Night.